Body shot. Ooh, that hurt, didn't it?
When the adrenaline starts pumping and you know what you can do with this right hand, it's hard to not do that.
Here are your hosts, Derick G and AJ.
What's going on, folks? Welcome back to another episode of the Bloody Water Podcast. UFC Vegas 56 is in the books. Alexander Volkov, he gets a 2-minute knockout on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Was it to be expected? I think so. Maybe not him, but that somebody was going to sleep. I told you guys this on the pre-show. I guess the controversy comes in early stoppage, sound stoppage. When you're a referee doing the hardest job, the most thankless job that there is in the sport, it's difficult to say. These are split-second reactions and decisions that ultimately will end up affecting the long-term longevity of a career and the health of any one of these fighters. So you definitely have to take off the brakes. You know what I mean? Take your foot off the gas a little bit when it comes down to the criticism. But that's something that I definitely want to talk about today. So folks, let me bring in my co-host, the New Mexico native, the Santa Fe bomber himself, AJ, brother. What's up? Straight off the bat, what do you make of it, my man? Early stoppage for Volkov, Rozenstruik, man. Are we trying to preserve some brain cells for these guys? What are you thinking?
Nah, man, I think it was a pretty sound stoppage. Maybe early by 1 or 2 punches, but even then, why risk those punches? Why risk that damage? I was saying to you, Derick, when the mics are cold, the last thing you want to do is get Luke Rockhold against Yoel Romero against the fence, man. So, especially by a big, 260-pound dude, it's the last thing you need. And once you saw Rozenstruik slumped up against Cage, I was with the ref, man. Stop it.
Yeah. Really? I mean, listen, man, I think that it was sound to a degree. The biggest thing you have to take into consideration, right, is that they're heavyweights, bro. If these were two flyweights, 225-pounders, all right, let it go on a little bit longer. But when you see, and you just have images in your head of, the Frank Mirs, of the Francis Ngannous, of all the big boys in the heavyweight division throughout history who have put real damage on people and who have, listen, Rozenstruik, he came victim to one of those Ngannou massive blitzes where he's taking those shots after he's knocked out. So you don't want to keep repeating that time and time again. I think it was fair, but we'll talk about it more in just a little bit. AJ, man, this was a fun card. I said it was a sleeper going into it, right? We have UFC 275 next week, so it's like this is the lull before the storm, the calm before the storm, I guess I should say. However, had a couple performances of the nights. We had a fight of the night, of course, as always, but 9 finishes and 14 bouts. That is a 64% finish rate, 5 knockouts, 4 submissions, and 2 upsets, AJ. But even more impressive than that, I think one of the biggest, I guess I should say, takeaways from this entire card, bro. 3 of 4 of the UFC debuting fighters, they got the dub, bro. And how often do you see that happen? Because I feel like normally you can't bet the bank on the newcomer, on the person with no experience, but you could this weekend, more or less. What do you make of it, brother?
Man, this one took me by surprise. A lot of them I saw at the beginning of this card, a lot of the favorites were winning. So in that case, I also did not expect the people making the debut to come up and get the dub either, man. And I went against it. As you can see on that scorecard down low, man, Derick's catching up because of it. It was an interesting week, but good to see the new guys getting the dub. Very few and far between does that happen, so it is nice to see because nothing is guaranteed in this game, man. So how'd you take it, Derick?
Well, listen, I like it, obviously, but I think that it's interesting. I mean, not just because of the picks, but I also like when a newcomer can come in and say, like, hey, you thought that this was your territory, this was your turf. I came in, this was my first fight in the big show, and I got the job done. I'm here to stay. The Karine Silva's, for an example, man, that big win over Poliana Botelho. I mean, that was massive right there. It made it seem like she ultimately belongs. When you're talking about the Askar Mozharov, we got a lot to talk about in a second when it comes down to that. So before we do any of that, of course, you know what I mean, I have to go into the recap. So let's jump into the recap right here, brother. All right, man. So I won the week 5-1, 3-3 effort for you. So even though this was not a winning week, this was not a net positive week for you, this wasn't a negative week. I mean, you went flush on it, 3-3, 0-0. We might as well make it as a consideration. However, let's just run through it real quick, AJ. So my lone pick, Michael Trizano, and man, Lucas Almeida. That's a bad man right there. We'll talk about it in a second. Alexander Volkov, Movsar Evloev, Karine Silva, Ode Osbourne, and Alonzo Menifield. Those were 5 money line picks, 5-1 on the night for me. For my man AJ, you got the Volkov, you got Evloev, you got Menifield, but we missed on the Adashev pick, we missed on the Botelho pick and the Trizano pick, which is understandable. And now that we have a little bit of hindsight, just very, very briefly, AJ, just like kind of, briefly touch on, what do you think went wrong for the Adashevs, the Botelhos, the Trizanos at UFC Vegas 56?
Man, the one I'm most upset, at least of myself in the pick, is the Ode Osbourne Adashev fight, because I was back and forth with that one. Literally, I deleted the pick 3 times before going, and man, I mean, Ode showed up. This dude's long, man. Yeah, so that one I put a lot of blame on me, not knowing, the faults over here. But the Silva, man, the Silva Botelho, you can't, that's all Silva. She showed up, she got it done. She was looking a little on the edge, Botelho was kind of winning a little bit, and then Silva came back, man. Yeah, absolute power. Trizano, I didn't think anybody saw that coming, man. That was wild. Almeida is the man, bro. That was a great fight, and Almeida proved that he's a real deal. I thought that was another one that I didn't see coming at all. So don't really feel too bad about the Botelho or the Trizano loss, but I do feel rough about that Adashev loss for me personally, man.
Well, this kind of goes back to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, where you said trusting your gut is a big part of what we do in this game. When it comes down to it, this is a 50-50 shot. Everybody has a 50-50 shot of winning. So when you have the Ode Osbourne and you lock it down, then at the last second, no, I'm going to go Adashev. No, it's just like how they say on the test, man. Never go back and change your answer because the first one was probably right. So either way, folks, 67-35 am I on the year. 68-34 is AJ. So that is the perk of building up that big lead, is that even when you have an off night like you did this weekend, you're still in the lead, brother. So I still got to play a little bit of catch up, but the score has definitely reduced the gap, I guess I should say. Now, moneyline is one thing, AJ, and that's the thing that we've kind of been harping on for weeks here at the Bloody Water Podcast, is that over time, we say, all right, we can do money line. It's easy to just say who's going to win, but what's more difficult is picking the methodology of winning, but what's also more lucrative is picking the methodology of winning. So let's talk about our prop bet recaps, brother. So, folks, you could see UFC Vegas 56 bets. I went 4-2 on the prop bets. AJ went 2-4. So once again, it's kind of that live by the sword, die by the sword mentality. AJ went 3-3 on the money line, 2-4 on the prop bets, and I went 5-1 on the money line, 4-2 on the prop bet. So what's most notable? AJ, brother, clearly, let's talk about it real quick. So let me pull this back out, and let's see. Boom, there we go. Hold on, sorry, folks. There we go. All right, AJ, brother, let's talk about it real fast. So, Alexander Volkov via TKO. That one I don't think was the most difficult thing to predict in the world. However, you went points, and I understand the rationale behind it, but when you have these heavyweights, isn't that something that we need to be taken into consideration? How often, when you don't have the Cyril Gans in the ring, you know what I mean? When you don't have these point fighters who are willing to just sit back and disengage, how often are we really seeing decisions when you got two strikers who are clashing head to head?
Yeah, very, very true. And to me, it was more playing it a little safe, because I thought Volkov was also going to play it a little safe. Turns out, homeboy came to absolutely bang. And when Jairzinho got on that front foot, so did Volkov. So should have taken that into consideration as well. But I mean, the safety, I'm not too sad about it, because it can happen. But like you said, Derick, when you get two big heavyweights going at it toe to toe, the KO is definitely going to happen.
Absolutely. And the next one that we could hit on was, I think, the one to lock on the night. The one thing that I think that you could bet the house on, and that was Movsar Evloev winning on points against Dan Ige. Now, Dan Ige is a huge name and all of that good stuff, but we know when you have an undefeated Russian grappler who does their bread and butter basically is taking the fight to the ground, and they can strike a little bit. I'm not even talking about Movsar Evloev specifically, but just that archetype of a fighter, you kind of have to bet the house on those guys. This is the conversation I have when a lot of my buddies say, hey man, who do you think's going to win? So-and-so, the big name or the unknown name that is the high-level motor, grappler, Russian, undefeated. I'm the undefeated Russian almost every time, right? I mean, just thought process-wise, do you agree with me there? Do you think that there was any way you could really deviate there?
Yeah, Derick, that if there's ever a time to bet the rent, which there never is, folks, it's always betted on the undefeated Russian, man.
Absolutely, but like AJ said, don't do it. All right, man. Trizano points, we missed on that. Almeida got the win on that one. Karine Silva on points. I really did think that Silva would be able to edge it out on points on this one, but she went aggressive. She got the finish. That's definitely, both of us had points. Even though I had Silva, you had Botelho, we both missed on the methodology and ended up being a finish. Now, Ode Osbourne via TKO. My rationale behind this, AJ, he's long, he's got like a 7-inch reach advantage, and he's a counter striker. Adashev, the kickboxer, he has to move forward to be able to initiate his offense. That is like a recipe for a TKO, in my opinion. Do you kind of see the light a little bit now in hindsight?
Oh yeah, 100%, man. Ode caught Adashev with a beautiful counter right hook. But at the same point, if you miss that one, I think the points was still a good look for Adashev. It's just Ode, with that power and that clip, brother. It happens.
That's right. I mean, Ode Osbourne was a man who I think 80+% of his fights, of his wins have ended in a TKO or in a finish, I should say. So that was also the rationale behind it. But the easiest lock outside of the Evloev was Alonzo Menifield TKO. If it went any other way, I'd be so surprised. But there was no surprises there, right, AJ?
Yeah, not at all, bro. Not at all.
Not at all. So once again, folks, that is your UFC Vegas 56 prop bet recap. Until we went money line, we went prop bets. We gave you methodology. We gave you just about everything, and we did pretty damn good too, I have to say. So without any further ado, AJ, let me give a quick word to the people. Folks, drop a like, subscribe. A little over 375 subscribers, about 376. Let's get it up to 400. That's where we want to go. But we appreciate you guys, and what we're aiming to do right now is honing down and building a little bit more of our popularity on the interwebs, right? So go share the show with your friend. If you know anybody who is interested in the fight game and who is interested in making a little bit of money. But the most important thing is go follow us over on Instagram at Bloody Water Podcast, on Twitter at Bloody Water Pod, or go check out our website, www.bloodywaterpodcast.com. That's where you can go and you can get you some merch. You can get you a cool Bloody Water Podcast coffee cup so you could sip your potion, you could sip your cup of joe like a real deal fight fan. A real, someone who analyzes. I was going to say an analyzer analyzes. That's what we do. All right, AJ. I think it's fair to say that marketing aside, that results aside, we have a couple things that we need to talk about. Something that we touched on earlier, which is the controversy of an early stoppage. So let's get into the main card, brother. Let's jump straight to it.
Have you seen that replay, buddy? Your head was bouncing around like a pinball machine.
Time for some main card breakdown,
Courtesy of your hosts, Derick G and AJ.
Okay, so there's not much to talk about here, AJ. I think it's very fair to say that. There's not much to talk about in the grand scheme of the Alexander Volkov, Jairzinho Rozenstruik fight, because at the end of the day, it lasted all of 2 minutes. Combined, they landed less than 30 strikes, but what is telling is that Alexander Volkov looked like a different fighter than he has in the past. And what I mean by that is when you don't have the threat of somebody trying to take you down, when you don't have the threat of somebody trying to dance around you, when you know somebody's going to walk forward and it's either they're going to knock you out or I'm going to knock you out, there's a different mentality we can take. And Alexander Volkov definitely looked like that Drago that was going to be a world beater before he ran into the Curtis Blades and the, Cyril Gons and all the Tom Aspinalls, all that good stuff, right? So let's talk about it, AJ. Rozenstruik had a little bit of success, man. He walked forward and he decided to go the power route, as opposed to the precision route. Volkov, he tried to pick him apart, throw some kicks, use that nice cross to go down the pipe, you know what I mean? And just pick his angles and use the precision to generate the knockout. Even though Rozenstruik commented back after the fight saying, I was never knocked out, man. We were just getting started. The fight ended, and that's what it was. Mouthpiece went flying out. You know what it was. Was this the appropriate methodology in terms of a fight plan, a game plan for each fighter to take, or do you think that Rozenstruik could have did something better, or Volkov, even though he won, could have did something a little bit better?
Well, I think it was spot on for both, to be honest. I know on the commentary team they were talking that Volkov, he can wrestle. He has the chops to get it going and get wrestling. But when a guy's that big and he's throwing all those front kicks, everything down the pipe, uppercuts, man, and you're the small guy coming in, you're basically just letting your face be the target for one of those knees, man. So I think it was a good game plan from both. If only, maybe Rozenstruik had a little bit more head movement, that mouthpiece wouldn't have fallen out. Maybe the ref would have given just a little bit more pause for concern. But I mean, there's nothing much you can do in that short and that fast of a fight when those big of punches are flying. Not really much. Is there something you saw?
Well, the only thing that I could have seen for Alexander Volkov himself is that maybe try to dictate the range a little bit better. Just because Rozenstruik, when he wanted to come forward and get into the pocket of Volkov never got out of the pocket. He just stuck in the pocket and traded. And for a split second, I was like, Rozenstruik's about to knock out Volkov, bro. Like, it's about to happen. But then again, Volkov is a very durable fighter, very tough fighter. And at the end of the day, he got the job done, man. He knocked the mouthpiece out. He said that he dictated the range. He stuck in the pocket, and he got the job done. So I will just take the win for what it's worth for Alexander Volkov. Now, let me ask you a quick question, AJ, and this is unrelated to the actual fight, but this was pre-fight and post-fight situation for Alexander Volkov. You've heard the man speak plenty of times before, but this is one time where during the pre-fight interviews and the post-fight interviews, I picked up on something that I hadn't noticed before. Did you notice Alexander Volkov starting to speak with a slight stutter?
I didn't.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and it's nothing like too crazy, but it's definitely something that's there. And when I was looking at the comments, a lot of people were like, "Oh, I didn't know Volkov had a stutter." It's not a problem. It's not like a derogatory thing. But the first thing that the mind jumps to is, well, you're a heavyweight. You just notched your 35th career victory, not fight, but victory. You're starting to stutter. You're getting a little bit older. Are we seeing signs of the diminishing? Are we getting some CTE here, brother? You know what I mean? Like, are we starting to see the brain starting to go into a negative decline? And if you do start to see those symptoms, is now the time to beeline out of there? You feel me? Even though this is what you do, you signed up for this lifestyle. That's not what you want to start seeing, especially of some of your favorite fighters, right? So, what do you just make of that in and of itself?
Yeah, man, that's scary because you only get one brain, man. Or you go the Michael Bisping route and don't tell anybody and just literally fight like their last 10 fights and earn the championship with one eye. So there's two ways to go about it, man. But I don't know, an eye versus a brain. It's kind of not a big win for me either way. But Volkov, I mean, it's hard because how old is he? He's getting older. He must be past 35 if I had to guess. I don't have the number up right now.
He's 33 years old, brother. So he's
33.
right there. He's on the tip of his prime right there. That's what makes it even more troubling.
That makes it that's a harder decision, man. Especially, I think what does it for me, if my mom told me, hey, you're stuttering, like, is your brain okay? Then I'd be like, oh shit, like I guess I gotta know. Because then when somebody really knows you and tells you that, then it's the thing. People in the comment section, doesn't really matter. So somebody like Volkov, I would imagine. What do you think?
Well, listen, it all depends on the support system. That's kind of like the same point that you're making. If your support system is telling you, hey, brother, like we haven't picked up on this before, maybe this has been a thing for a while and we're just slow to pick up on it. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't want to overreact, but it's something that I definitely wanted to take into consideration. Now, lastly, AJ, do you think that there is any title hopes remaining for Alexander Volkov? Being that he's kind of in that gatekeeper status, right? You lost to the Curtis Blades, I'm pretty sure. You lost to the Cyril Gans. You lost to the Tom Aspinalls, the new breed of heavyweights, the new hybrid heavyweights that are kind of solidifying themselves as the real top 5 fighters in the division. He's not really there, and it seems like he can't get past those well-rounded, multi-dimensional fighters. So is there any path to the title? Because it seems like Volkov is kind of indicating himself that that's where he thinks things are going here.
Yeah, I actually do think there's a path, surprisingly, and it's only because of how shallow the heavyweight division is. There's so little fighters up there. You said top 5 upper echelon, Derick. We have a ranking system of top 15 where there's all these people going and mixing them up. But for some reason, the heavyweights, it literally is that top 5 bubble that you have to break into to kind of start getting a title shot. Volkov's right there. He's right on the cusp of it. So if he can get a couple more gatekeeping positions where he's stopping people just like this in the first round. And then the other fights are going on. Nobody wants to fight up at heavyweight. Next thing you know, they're like, oh, well, we got no one else besides Volkov. You want to scrap? That's his shot in, man. And that's when it happens. That's like the Glover. That's like the Bisping. Those are the fights that people take that they actually get it done. I could see it happening for Volkov. What about you?
I mean, the hardest part about this entire situation is the man is 33 years old. So it's not like there's not a lot of tread left on these tires. Like the man still has a lucrative, a long, beautiful future ahead of him, especially at heavyweight where the last thing to go is your power, right? That's what's most important. So is there an opportunity? Maybe if he sticks around long enough to where all of these new breed fighters come and go, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to be tough. And I think that he has solidified himself, which is a very, very difficult thing to do, as a bona fide top 10 fighter for the rest of his days, or at least until we start to see a real legitimate fall off that cliff in terms of performance. But either way, that was a huge win by Alexander Volkov. And like I said, that is 35th career win in 45 career fights, brother. I mean, beautiful thing to see. Now, let's talk about the undefeated Russian grappler, Movsar Evloev, who basically did the job that everybody in the building thought that he was going to do, man. He came in and he didn't force the takedown, which I think is the improving evolution of the Movsar Evloevs. I talked before, when he fought Mike Grundy, man, he didn't need to go in and take shots like that because he said, well, that's what Mike Grundy wants me to do, so I'm going to have to win this fight in the stand-up. I was not confident that he could win the fight in the stand-up with Dan Ige, but he did a pretty damn good job. But clearly, the real bread and butter came in. Let me zap the energy. Let me hang on top of him, make him carry my weight, and basically just win an easy 30-27 across the board. He even got a 30-26. That's kind of how dominant that he was, and land a little pot shot. So how much do these pot shots mean to you, AJ? Because the final numbers on the board, 144 total strikes to 47 in favor of Movsar Evloev. This was obviously a big deal, right? But I feel like we can take a little bit away knowing that these weren't all just like, I'm swinging and banging. These were a lot of little pot shots. So what do you make of that?
A lot of little pot shots. And if you've ever been hit by them with those 4 knuckles, those ones at the beginning, they don't they don't hurt the same way normal punchers, but they sting and they're very annoying. They're a pain in the ass. And it's one of those ones where you keep getting tagged and you're like, God damn it. Like, stop, bro. Cut. Like, you're not hurting me, but you're hurting me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're just annoying, making it more difficult. It's kind of more of a mind game than anything. You're not going to get put to sleep by them, but it is something you need to address and stop and fight off the submission, man. Great classic fight by Evloev. I mean, not really. What can you do when the guy's this good and on the ground, and then he shows up in those first couple rounds and he's striking, looking fluid, slipping, ripping? This dude has a lot of potential, and he's 16-0, something like that. Like whatever 16-0 the record is now for Evloev. Man, very impressive win. I'm excited to see who they're going to pair this dude up next with. Is there anyone you can see on the top of your mind besides that top 5 of the 145 that really is going to give Evloev a whole bunch of problems, Derick? Or is this dude top material right away? You know?
No, brother. I don't really see too many people giving him too many problems. And that's the big thing is that we've been saying this for months now. I feel like this is going to be the future champion one day. It's just a matter of how many steps is he going to take before he gets that opportunity right now? I do love that he said, I'm tired of fighting no-name fighters. Dan Ige is not a no-name fighter, so I don't know where that's coming from. But he's saying, I want the Arnold Allens of the world, which is actually funny because I was talking to one of my buddies, and I was just like, hey, man, this is right after the fight. I was all like, this was a big win, but I'd like to see him fight a Giga Chikadze or a Arnold Allen. And then he calls out Arnold Allen, and I was like, okay, that's the right path to be taking. Now, I think Arnold Allen is a less lucrative fight for him because it's not the stylistic difference as a Giga Chikadze. He could knock your whole entire head off, knock your liver off your body. You know what I'm saying? Arnold Allen, great swing and bang fighter, but it's more grappler versus grappler, right? So we want to see those stylistic differences that make the fight really interesting. Either way, I wanted to take a look really quickly, man, because going into this fight, AJ, Evloev, he held the record for the 7th most takedowns, right, in the featherweight division. Actively. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm just trying to take a look real fast. So I'm actually going to pull this up. We're going to find Movsar Evloev for his takedowns. And let's see what we got here. Because he has a lot of records on the board now. He didn't going into this fight, but after the fight, he does. So what's most takedowns landed? Okay, he moved from 7 to 4, brother. Just like that, man. Just like that. So let's see. So the folks at home can see it too. There we go. All right, so what you're going to see is Movsar Evloev is number 4 in takedowns landed. The number 1 leader is Darren Elkins, then Andre Fili. Makwan Amirkhani, Zabit Magomed Sharapov, and then Movsar Evloev. Then Frankie Edgar, Charles Oliveira, Charles Rosa, Bryce Mitchell. What a list to be in, brother. And that's kind of the whole point right there is that Evloev, with 9 takedowns landed against Dan Ige, brother, he just instilled his will at any given point. So, I mean, what can you say about this fight, man? What does this do? Let me ask you on the opposite side. We're talking about how good Evloev is. We know how good he is. We know how good that he has the potential to become. We know he can become a champion, especially with these 5-round fights. But against Dan Ige, man, I mean, this is lost 3 in a row for Ige? Like, this is not where you want your career to be headed. But then again, you have to ask yourself the question of, how do you walk into a mismatch like this with all the confidence that you're going to win, and then you get thoroughly outclassed, like everybody imagined? Like, stylistically, I just felt like for Ige, you shouldn't be like, let me take the hardest, worst matchup fight ever, or let me stick around in the UFC a little bit longer. You know what I mean? I don't think he's going to get cut, but this was just a terrible decision off the bat, right?
Well, this goes exactly against what Uncle Chael preaches every single day, man. He's literally taking the hardest fights, not at the top premier, location, and probably not getting paid the best for it. So it's rough for Ige because this is the 50K Ige, man. This guy's getting bonuses all the time. He should be strictly a pay-per-view fighter, taking opponents that are catered to him, man, making him stay around a little longer. Maybe he gets a little heat for that, but either way, he's feeding his family. So I think this is an oversight for the Ige team and a rough loss for him as well, man.
Absolutely, brother. So big win by Movsar Evloev, but let's talk about that just a little bit more, man. So do you think right now, I mean, regardless of who the fighter is, the Sean O'Malley's of the world, the Paddy Pimbletts of the world, who are very vocal on, well, I'm not getting paid that much, so why am I going to be taking these crazy fights? Like, no, I'm going to take the easiest fight imaginable, literally taking out of the textbook of Uncle Chael. Should we start putting more stock into that, man? Because it seems like they kind of have an idea of what they're doing. Like, this new generation is saying, I understand social media now. I understand my worth. I understand that I'm bringing to the table X, Y, and Z. So this is why I need to be compensated for X, Y, and Z, as opposed to listen, Dan Ige is a Hawaiian, bro. And I don't want to generalize, but a lot of the time, these Hawaiians, they have the fighting spirit within them. They don't care. They came to scrap. That's literally what they came to do. So people's motives are different. But like I said, should we be putting more stock in these smart fighters, quote unquote, like the Sean O'Malley's and the Paddy Pimbletts, who just want to take the business approach to the top of the division?
I think so. I think we need to put a little more stock in it as long as those fighters fight. Like the worst ones are like the 170 pound. You know, if you're coming up on the way and you saying like, hey, I'm not getting paid anywhere near the money that the guy I'm gonna fight's getting paid. Yeah. So why would I fight him? I'm gonna fight these guys down here and just whoop up on a couple cans until I start making that money to get going up there. You know, that's kind of like I don't fault that at all. Yeah. But who I do fault is once you get to that point and then you're like, well, I don't want to fight down. Like, I don't, you know, I'm in the rankings. I'm number 5. I should be fighting up. Like, bro, you need to fight whoever, whenever, all the time, because now you're in that contender spot. You know, you're trying to get to that gold. So there's where I lose the aspect of the negotiation. But if you're down low, you're coming up, man, negotiate all day, realize your worth, get that social media popping. That's the best thing to do, especially in this time and day age when somebody else has laid out the blueprints for you, like Uncle Chael, like a Sugar Show, like a Conor McGregor, all these people's names that are household names. Why not follow? You know, why not follow suit?
No, you're right about that. I really couldn't have said it any better, but that's what it comes down to, man. It's starting to see that the fruits of their labor for some of these people taking the toughest challenges, it's not working out for you, man. At the end of the day, I think that we can also kind of take the approach that the Karolina Kowalkiewicz, right, who just snapped her 5-fight losing skid, right, and getting back on track. She's an OG veteran who's fought some of the toughest of the tough fighters, and now she's kind of getting back on track. But you have to think that there's some type of inner working in terms of a relationship between her and the UFC brass, because who else can lose 5 fights in a row besides Sam Alvey and not get cut? You know what I'm saying? So we'll just leave that for what it's worth. But I definitely thought that was something to think about. Now, brother, Lucas Almeida. I want to talk about this really quickly because at the end of the day, his TKO prop, which is one that we didn't necessarily hit on, right? But we talked about it. We said, well, there's really 2 ways of this going down. Like, Almeida can come in and he could finish Trizano like he's finished everybody else, but we don't see that happening because he's kind of a chiseled vet at this point. He's tough. He just went 3 full rounds with me and Hakeem Dawodu and didn't really get phased. But Almeida, he's call him left hook Larry, brother, because that left hook was landing all day long, and it stunned Trizano on multiple occasions. But this ended up being a fight of the night, brothers, which is really important to kind of know, right? This ended up being a back-and-forth affair, even though Almeida got him out there in the second round, one person dropping the other person dropping or wobbling or whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, when we look at the stats, it looks like there's 2 knockdowns for Almeida, 1 for Trizano, so Almeida definitely got the better of him, landed more strikes, outlanded him by like 50 strikes and whatnot. But it seemed like Almeida, in a weird way, he was in control the entire fight. And the only thing that we had against him, to hold against him in terms of not picking him, is that he's probably going to gas out. But he didn't. It didn't even come close. You know what I mean? He was in full steam, man. I mean, how bright is the future for Lucas Almeida? Because Trizano was no easy outing. And I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is, let's just take a look. This is the first time the man has lost via TKO in his career, in his 13-fight career. So, big win. What do you think?
Massive win for Almeida. Nonetheless, you get a dub on your first fight in the performance, but you KO somebody like Mike Trizano, who also had, like you said, fight of the night. So it was back and forth. You had to come through some adversity. Then you put it on a guy. Like, man, this is this is how stories are written for Almeida, man. He has a lot of potential to go. Maybe a little too much. maybe the hype might be too high for Almeida, but I hope not, because it does set him up for a rocket ship trajectory for his next fight, man. If he can get somebody else somewhat, not a massive name, but another name like a Mike Trizano, or maybe just a little bit above, get a KO on them, man, it starts to bode really, really well, especially in a massively exciting 145-pound division.
I feel like at this point, man, just because we're here every single week for all of these fights, and you're seeing this new fighter in 145, this new fighter at 155, this new fighter at 135, and you're like, how deep can these divisions truly go, man? Like, at a certain point, you're like, where does Almeida even fit in the grand scheme of this division? Because when we start talking about some of those killers and some of the people who are dark horses, it's like, how many dark horses can you have? Movsar Evloev, like I said, he kind of started in this same path of like, who is this guy? What? You beat who in your UFC debut? Okay, 6 wins later. Oh, okay. You know, you're really taking over. So I think that the future is definitely bright for Lucas Almeida, especially because he's an entertainer, AJ. That is the thing right there that is propelling these people to the top, to the fancy fights, to the big fights, to the feature prelims, is you're an entertainer, man. You're being flashy and you're getting the job done. But the biggest question that I have for you is that, where does Michael Trizano bounce back to at this stage of his career, man? I mean, he lost 3, he came out as a very promising prospect, but your 3 losses have come to the Lucas Almeida, Hakeem Dawodu, and Grant Dawson. You got the win over the violent Bob Ross, who is no longer in the UFC. You got the win over Ludovic Klein, who for me and you, we say that win speaks volumes. But then again, Klein has been very up and down, even though he was my dark horse, brother. I'm not going to lie to you. I was like, Klein is the dude who can come in and kill it. So where does he go from here?
Well, and just speaking on Ludovic Klein real quick, man, I had such high hopes for him as well, and it's just kind of been a petering off. He might come back. He might be a dark horse. But as far as Mike Trizano, it's a hard one because and you were talking about depth before, depth in the 145-pound division, also 155 and 135 is getting there as well. We're talking number 50 like he's a number 12 fighter. You know what I'm saying? And he's talented. He's smart. He can get it done. Fighting dudes like Hakeem Dawodu, Grant Dawson. I mean, even Luis Pena when he was in the show, man, those aren't slouches or slumps at all. So you're the depth of those divisions is like 50 to 75 deep of serious killer talent, and then you go further than that, they're like 120 fighters. So they got a lot of room in there to wiggle around a little bit. But as far as Mike Trizano, I think you give him like a not a wrestler, not another. I don't really know, because I was thinking I want to see him against somebody completely different, but also at the same point, why not give him another entertaining fight that he might possibly win and get another fight of the night bonus for? Yeah. Like there's no reason against it. It's not like he completely got handled in this fight and we need to kind of slump him over to the side or something. This one he actually did well. He got caught.
Wasn't his night, brother. It wasn't his night, but it definitely was the night of a Lucas Almeida, man. And this is a scary man. He moves to 14-1, 100% finish rate, bro. So I'll just leave that for what it's worth. You want to keep your eye on this man in the featherweight division. But if there's another fighter who you want to keep your eye on, it's definitely Karine Silva, brother. I mean, listen, another fighter, 100% finish rate, and she gets the finish against Poliana Botelho in her UFC debut. What makes this more important is we talked about it. Poliana Botelho said it herself. She says, I am fighting for my job going into this fight. And you get handled and submitted in the first round. So, AJ, let's talk about that. Sometimes back against the wall can be a gift, and sometimes back against the wall could be a curse. Do you think this was a curse for Poliana Botelho in this fight, given that she looked great, bro? Like, she looked like if that sequence didn't happen where she got set up for the Darce, she could have won a points battle had she was able to stick her range and, kind of inflict her will. She looked game, but it just, once again, wasn't her night. So what do you make of that entire back against the wall situation?
Man, she looked very game, but I think what did her in the worst was her herself confirming to the bosses, if I don't win this one, you have all my permission to cut me. Like, you know what I'm saying? You don't want to go out there and say, I'm fighting for my job on this one. You say oh no, you win or lose, I still have many a fight left. Like, don't worry about that. Don't even give the UFC brass that idea that you were even feeling the heat that you might get cut, because then you're just putting it out there, Yeah. So I'm not a big fan of saying, this is the one I'm putting my stake in, because it's a 50-50 shot. Next thing you know, you're, 5 seconds away from ending round one, getting saved by the bell. But in your mind, man, all you're seeing is this dark circle just growing big or smaller and smaller, and it's gasping for breath. Rough loss, man, because Poliana Botelho was looking great. I was excited because I was like, oh, a point battle, like hell yeah. And we talked about in the pre-show that Silva was going to be the bigger of the fighters. Botelho walks in and she looks stout, bro. She looked thick. She was taller. She was bigger. I was feeling good. I was like, this is going to be a nice win. And then she gets tapped out. So rough loss, not her day, but Karine Silva, man, all compliments to Silva, because I didn't see this coming at all, man. This is one of those fighters, just like an Almeida, you need to watch out for her, because she's going to be banging, man. And she fights with Tyler Santos. I forgot. Yep. The fact that she trains with Tyler Santos, man, it's going to be very entertaining to watch.
That was all kind of part why I was like, you have to pick Karine Silva to win this fight. I just thought that Poliana Botelho, believe it or not, man, people going into this fight, they're like, this is a low-level women's fight. Like, disregard this fight. I'm like, you guys are tripping. Have you watched Karine Silva do her thing? Have you watched her between strawweight, flyweight, and bantamweight, man? Have you seen the ability she has in terms of taking the fight to the ground ground and inflicting her will, and that's what she did in this fight. But for Poliana Botelho, I think the problem is if you're a knockout artist, which clearly she is if you look at her resume, right? If your bread and butter is I have to get people out of there on the feet, then I think that you need to be going to an extreme couture. You need to be going to whatever wrestler camp and just work on sprawls all day long, takedown defense. Your hands are already there, but let's hone in on the other parts, right? Let's not allow a Silva to be able to get close to us and take us down, to be able to inflict the will. But I will say, if there's one thing about Karine Silva, she locked in that Darce picture perfect textbook, man. She folded Botelho over herself. There's no room to breathe. These fighters aren't tapping because they're quitters and because there's no will to win in them. They're tapping because you've distorted their body to a position to where literally there is no air going to the brain. Next thing you know, you're about to fall asleep. It was actually interesting, AJ, because I was rewatching really quickly, and this doesn't have much to do with it, but Corey Sandhagen versus Aljamain Sterling. And you remember, Aljo put the back on him, choked him out. Corey Sandhagen actually went out in that fight, but still like subconsciously tapped, right? So like you're going to sleep. You're literally asleep, but your body is like muscle memory just like tapping just to try to save you, man. Those are the extents that your body's willing to go. So like I said, I don't want to look at a Poliana Botelho or anyone to look at her and be, oh, look at, she just came in there and quit. No, man. Silva put that fucking Darce on her, and that was just a beautiful thing to see. So huge win for the Brazilian, even though they're both Brazilians. But last thing on this one, what do you make, man? They've been making a lot of Brazil versus Brazil matchups recently, and I feel like that used to be reserved for Brazil cards. But given the state of this is UFC Vegas 56, man, 56 events in Vegas just for fight nights, it looks like they're pitting them up against each other. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I think it's just another depth issue. It's just all the Brazilians like to scrap, and then they're all down either training in Vegas or in Florida. So it's kind of they're there.
All right, brother. Last thing is Botelho cut after this fight?
I mean, she said it. I think she has to be cut. You know, that's the unfortunate way about it. You say you're fighting for your job and you lose. Well, I guess your job's gone.
She kind of manifested it herself, right? So, yeah, big win by Karine Silva. But talk about a bigger win, then we need to talk about Ode Osbourne. Now, AJ, you were right in your assessment of the fight. I mean, Adashev was getting out in front. He was landing the combinations. He was making Osbourne's job a little more difficult. And Osbourne said something in the post-fight presser that was a little interesting to me. And he said, Adashev is used to seeing clean, technical combinations. He's a professional kickboxer, after all, or at least he once was in his past life. I need to do something wacky, something kind of you're not ready for. And this is actually something that I've been talking to a couple of my jiu-jitsu buddies about, is that when you're fighting somebody and they're not technically trained, right? You have the young brawler who just comes and throws haymakers from weird angles. Sometimes you will legitimately get caught, not because you don't know how to defend yourself, but because you haven't been technically trained to defend a weird shot from a weird unorthodox angle that nobody throws, right? So imagine Ngannou when he fought Rozenstruik and he's throwing arm up here, arm over here, swinging over here. Jairzinho got out the way of everything, and then that last one just boop, and that was it. So for an Ode Osbourne who threw an interesting kind of like counter check over the top, overhand right, check hook right, and just put it on the button for Adashev. And those follow-up shots definitely did not help the brain cells of an Adashev, but definitely he used the precision to generate the knockout. But like you said, AJ, what if you missed? Adashev was looking good, bro. Adashev was looking good, but now he is 4-4 in his UFC career. Not boding well for my man, but there is promise here for him, right? Like he's looking good until he's not. What do you make of this?
Man, he was looking great until he was, and I was feeling another fight where I was feeling great about it. Walking in, Adashev's looking good, things are going, and then Osbourne, man. I mean, what can you do in a minute? You know what I'm saying? Apparently, if you're Ode Osbourne, put somebody to absolute sleep because this dude had the craziest. And I think you were talking about the Ode Osbourne talking about how it was. Or how the knockout was, excuse me, some little more words here, but he threw a perfect, a jab where he saw Adashev slip. He read that. He's like, oh, okay, he's going to slip that way. I'm going to throw this wacky ass right hook as I'm stepping back. Doesn't even need power. Just puts it right on the button. Ode Osbourne, man, super impressive that he can see that in the moment and land something like that on an Adashev who, like you said, used to be a professional kickboxer, now one of the premier strikers in the 125-pound division, but still, Ode, man, coming back and seeing that stuff. He knows, when you're that technical, there's a little bit of holes. There's holes in everyone's game. Man, rough for Adashev to see where he's going to go from here specifically because it's 35, or like he's ranked number 35 in Tapology. What are you going to do? Not many people. You're a very dangerous fighter, so not many people want to fight you. Yeah. You're probably going to get matched up with a lot of grapplers soon. But, man, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think of the fight?
Well, I think that it speaks to Ode Osbourne's record, man. 9 of his 11 fights or his 11 wins have ended in a finish. 7 of those fights have ended in the first round. So he's back to his Ode Osbourne ways, man. This is what he does. It's not a surprise that he's doing this. What's surprising to me is that I feel like inevitably that counter style is only going to work for so long until you're going to run into somebody who's going to have such an off-beat, off-rhythm game that you're not going to be able to set up your counters. And next thing you're going to know it's going to be round 3, and you're like, oh, fuck, what happened, man? I'm behind 2 rounds. I need to finish them now. Now I need to go on the offensive. So I think counter-striking is beautiful, but only to a degree. This was just the perfect matchup for it. I think Adashev was tailored. This was just a tailor-made matchup for a knockout. Somebody was going to sleep, whether it was Adashev being on the offensive or Ode Osbourne being on the back foot offensive with the counters. Either way, I think Adashev still has promise, brother. I don't think that he should get cut, but I understand if he does get cut because he's losing these fights pretty convincingly. And listen, getting knocked out, and let me see, his last 5 fights, he get knocked out against Osborne. He got that big win over Ryan Benoit, who is no longer in the game. Finished by Tyson Nam, and then lost to Sumaderji, right? So it's been difficult matchups for him, and they've all been bangers. So interesting to see where he goes, but there's one thing for sure is that Ode Osbourne, like I said, he's back to doing Ode Osbourne things, and that's what you'd love to see. Now, this is one, AJ, and it's kind of a shame that we had to wait until the last minute of it, but I think that this is literally a case right here, AJ, and look, we finally got a headshot from my man, Askar Mozharov. I think that this is literally one of the weird cases that's going to go down in UFC history, man. I think that Askar Mozharov somehow, some way, conned his way into the UFC. I really think that, man, because he started off, he got signed to the promotion at 25-7. Oh, what do we know? We've been concealing some losses. We've been making up some wins. Next thing you know, no worries, 21-11, still a respectable record. And then, right before the fight takes place, just kidding, we have another update. Actually, he's more of like a 19-12 type fighter, right? And then you fight Alonzo Menifield. And obviously there's a discrepancy in talent levels here, AJ, but what do you make of a fighter who is unaccomplished? This is his company debut. He's talking about how he's going to, defeat Menifield and he's going to do all these great things. You get taken down, and then you start chirping at your opponent, at Menifield, talking about, I don't feel that these shots don't mean nothing, that ain't nothing, chirping at him, right? And Alonzo Menifield's like, bro, you trying to get in my head, right? Like, you want me to just stand and bang? That's what you want, right? Well, I'm gonna wrestle you even more now. And how about I put you in a crucifix and I put a fucking lump on your head, looking like you got lumped up, like the Goonies or something crazy like that, man. You got the lump on your head after because Menifield was driving elbows all day in the crucifix position, looking like a Valentina Shevchenko out there, bro. It was a beautiful thing to see. But I think this is a one-and-done stop for Askar Mozharov, man. Did he con his way into the UFC? What do you make of the debacle that was an Askar Mozharov in the UFC thus far?
Man, I love the way you said that, Derick. It feels absolutely like he conned his way into the UFC, and all I can think is somebody somewhere is going to be referencing, man, what's in the bag? Like, I feel like Askar Mozharov also had a mysterious bag he was trying to sneak in, but he was the one inside, bro. It might be Mozharov that snuck in all way long ago back in I forget the actual name's event, but in
Fight Island. Yeah, Fight Island,
Thank
brother.
you. I'm glad you knew what I was talking about, Derick. I know the little fans out there will also know, man, what's in the bag. Mozharov, he got snuck in. This is how he made his way into the. I was shocked, and it was literally a last act of a desperate man, where you're chirping on a dude you're on your back. You're like, come on, bro, these don't even hurt. Let's just stand up. Let's just stand up. Like, what the fuck?
On,
yeah,
bro.
No, not a chance, bro. Yeah, so I think this has to be one and done. And even you can't piss people off. Like, if your opponent is so mad at you that you have 3 records that they announce it at the end, like, you're doing something wrong. So I think this is a one and done stop. This is very much not a blemish on the UFC, but more of like an asterisk, like, oh, what happened, man? What happened to this dude?
Well, whoever's job it is in overseeing these things needs to be fired or needs to at least get a little talking to or something, bro. Because it's like, how do you not review the record? Just at least review it. Like, watch the tape. What did the tape look like? You know what I mean? If we have the time to do it, I hope that they have the time to do it. So just watch the tape, because even when they were trying to promote him, I was just like, the few highlights they're using, I was like, y'all are really picking and choosing here, brother. Like, you're not showing a lot of this dude's fights. A lot of where he just throws one body kick that gets blocked and then the dude just falls over and the corner stops it. It's just like, all right, bro. So I'm not going to lie to you, though, man. He threw like 2 strikes where I'm like, oh, those look kind of sharp. You know what I mean? But it's easy to throw strikes when you're not worried about defending and you're just like throwing it all out there just to get taken down. Like the atrocious takedown defense, right? You just get taken down at will. does whatever he wants to. You were the bigger man. But Alonzo Menifield, man, this is a dude who got the wrestling chops, bro. And I love to see the well-roundedness. This is what he does. Another first-round knockout. But AJ, this is like the easiest money you could have ever possibly made. Alonzo Menifield at plus money for a TKO. When we saw that, we were just like, how? How do you not jump on that? Which is what we did. That's why we got the dub on that. That's why you come to us, because we'll take care of this for you. We're not going to let, just because you have a name that sounds distinctly Russian, even though he's a Ukrainian fighter, you have a Russian-sounding name, and you look scary and you got tattoos, does not mean you're just going to come in and just steamroll everybody. I'm sorry. But, AJ, that's the thing. The UFC loves to build a narrative. They love to have stories. And I just have to put this out there, but I've been actually kind of reading into some theories on the YouTube, right? Grand old YouTube. We love YouTube. That there's a possibility that Askar Mozharov may have been able to slide into the UFC given the current state of affairs in Ukraine right now. So it could have been a kind of publicity narrative. Oh, let's get some traction on this fighter. Only to find out, man, this is like some Netflix documentary shit. This was a con man the whole time, conned his way into the UFC. And now he got the serious repercussion of he got his head knocked off his damn shoulders, crucifix style by Menifield. Is there any other just desserts that one fighter can get for trying to be somebody that they might not actually be?
Man, maybe an accidental groin shot in there just to add a little insult to injury. But I think getting your elbows dumped on your face by Alonzo, and when he's mad too, and in a crucifix position, I honestly can think of nothing worse, you know, unless he checks your oil in there too, happens. Like unless he's throwing all the dirty shit at you, that's the only other way it could have gotten worse than being pinned down, arms spread with Alonzo Menifield just dropping bombs on your face. No, man. And hey, I got to say, I called it too. It feels like this is very much a storyline coming from the UFC about the whole Ukrainian thing. I said it in the pre-show, he's the next UFC CM Punk right here. And it looks like we all got punked.
We all got punked, man. So definitely listen to AJ when he's talking about this stuff, because my man is on to something. And he kind of saw the writing on the wall before it inevitably happened. But I'm glad my man got his just desserts. Either way, Alonzo Menifield, big win. I'm actually a little bummed out to say I feel like this win means basically nothing in the grand scheme of his career, but it's another knockout to put on the resume. So let's just keep moving forward to the actual fighters that matter, because he did say this. He says he felt disrespected because he felt Mozharov was kind of treating this like a game. And he's like, when we step into the cage, that's not a game, bro. Like, this is real life. So I respect that, and you have to have respect for the fighters and the fight itself. But that is your UFC Vegas 56 main card, folks. So a lot of good fights, a lot of finishes, a lot of first round early stoppages, not much to talk about in some fights, but in the grand scheme of things, we're constantly progressing. Now, AJ, man, let's do a little bit of a prelim pour-over, brother. And let's just talk about a couple of results. We don't need to break down these fights too crazy. Let's talk about the results. I want to talk about a controversial decision. This isn't controversial in one person should have won or the other person should have won. This is just controversial in the way that the outcome of the fight went. Joe Solecki, he fought Alex de Silva, who I told you, I was like, I don't know how Alex de Silva is the underdog here. And come round one, I was like, oh, I'm a genius. I predicted correctly. Come round two, you're getting controlled Joe Solecki style, right? BJJ phenom. He loves taking the back and just hanging out there. And Alex de Silva does a myriad of things. He grabs Solecki's glove like a million times, and he sticks his toes in the cage. But even though he stuck his toes in the cage, I still did not feel like it gave him an advantage in the situation. His back was taken. There was nothing that your toe in the cage was going to do to avoid a neck sliding under, or arm sliding under your neck. You know what I mean? Either way, cheating is cheating, and I'm glad that Chris Tognoni pointed it out so many times that he says, all right, 1 point, blue corner, fuck out of here. We're going to continue that. We're not even going to take a break in the action. You're still going to sit here and worry about getting choked, and I'm taking a point away too. So come round three, I think it's fair to say Alex de Silva, he did what he needed to do to kind of edge out that round. He needed to be aggressive. He was throwing hooks. He dropped Solecki in the first round, right? So there was something there. But the end of the fight decision ended up being 28-28, 28-27, and 29-27. Winner being Joe Solecki. Now, if it was 28-27 times 2, I would have respected it more, because at the end of the day, I felt like Alex de Silva got 10-8'd in round 2. So you get 10-8'd, and then you lose a point, so you get 10-7'd, really. So that's where this comes in. However, Sal D'Amato, he was the sole judge to award Solecki the third round of the fight. And I think that's very problematic, because this went to potentially being a majority draw to a majority decision in favor of Joe Solecki. Do I think Solecki should have won? Yes. Yes, I do. I think that he basically did what he needed to do to win the fight. But I think that all it takes is one judge, just one, to do just one fuck up, man. Just one weird perception, adaptation of what happened in the fight to completely throw everybody's financial situations in flux and fuck everybody over. So just what do you make of that situation, man?
Sal D'Amato again?
Sal D'Amato, brother.
Again, man. It's I feel like this is just a revolving door that we're never gonna get out of with the whole
Yeah.
judging thing. And the crazy thing is they're having a meeting. They were Uncle Chill was talking about this, that Daniel Cormier, the Iron Lung,
Paul
help
Felder.
me out the name.
Paul Felder.
Paul Felder, all of them, all the commentary team is going to have a meeting with the referees and the judges on what the actual rules and how things are scored are.
Yeah.
And when they said, I was like, what? They haven't done that yet? Like, that's not day one?
Yeah.
That's not meeting one? Like, you get your paperwork and like, all right, guys, here's how this whole thing works. Like, that, I feel like that should have been day one shit. Mine is blown. Like, that right there, it's I don't even know what to say because, like I said, it's just a revolving door that we keep going around saying, like, this shouldn't be allowed to happen. How does judging keep messing up like this? Why is one single person's vote so impactful? Because it's only three people. It's only three people judging it. So we can go for days on this whole topic, but I just don't see how it's still being allowed to happen in the top premier sport or fighting sports in the world, man. It's crazy.
It's funny you say that because, that's definitely something you knock out in orientation, right? Like, let's figure out the ground rules and then proceed. But it's like, damn.
Sign your W-2. All right, here's the rule book. All right.
Exactly, but such is life, man. All right, we talked about it earlier, but Karolina Kowalkiewicz, man, she came in against Felice Herrig in a rematch, and this is one fighter on a 4-fight or on a 3-fight losing streak, and one on a 5-fight losing streak, right? And what was interesting to me is that Kowalkiewicz came in her classic, laid back against the cage, chilling, hanging out, no sense of urgency. But AJ, man, this is the kind of crazy thing is that in times before, we've seen her do that and then immediately lose, get starched because she has that lack of energy. She came out sharp like a pistol, man. She was just picking her shots. Striking was looking phenomenal. Felice Herrig, her boxing definitely was not on par of Kowalkiewicz's, but this time around. But Kowalkiewicz actually accredits a lot of her success to, believe it or not, another Poland native, a country mate of hers. JJ, man, Joanna Warrior, Joanna Champion, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, man. Joanna brought her into ATT and kind of groomed her to be the fighter that can come back from a 5-fight loss streak, man. So what do you make of that in and of itself? Big emotional win, you get the bounce back, and at the end of the day, you reunite with a former rival. Two Poland country people. So before you answer, brother, just turn me down just a little bit because I'm getting a little feedback in the mic. But tell me overall, man, this is a beautiful emotional comeback story, I feel like. What do you make of this?
Yeah, this is if this wasn't written by the UFC, or this was written by the UFC, I wouldn't be surprised, excuse me, because it's beautiful, man. Coming back from a former challenger, former opponent you used to have, but you're both country mates, coming back, she knows. And what I like about this is perfectly set up of how the entire sport and how the community acts with each other. You know, when you're involved in this, people are willing to extend a hand out. They're willing to, put the ladder down from the club that everybody's trying to get to. They're willing to extend that ladder and, open up a sharing hand, extend that olive branch, if you will. And I think that's what we like in sports, So it's good to see it even in the bad guy sport, even in the most dangerous one where we're lumping each other up. You still see fighters be like, bro, yeah, we fought. I know we fought, but you're cool. So come on, come train. Like, I can show you how to be better. That right there, that's the whole reason why I love sports. Nonetheless, challenging and all the things that sports are good for, but the fact that you can do that is humbling and it's beautiful to watch. It's something that's super cool, man. Like, you don't have that in NASCAR or basketball. Like, you don't have those in all the other sports. It's usually us against them. Nobody else comes in this crew besides us. You know what I'm saying? So it's nice to see. And Kowalkiewicz, man, looking sharp. I think that above all else is so impressive that she was able to get past that mentality of losing those 5 fights to come back and whoop some ass. Pretty impressive.
Believe it or not, bro, this was her first finish in her UFC career. All of these years later, it's never too late. Never give up on yourself, people. Never give up on yourself. Your sleeper, brother, Tony Gravely versus Johnny Munoz Jr. I don't know if you picked that sleeper for the reason in terms of like how it ended, but Gravely once again said, I'm not just a wrestler, man. I'll knock your block off. And he landed a perfectly timed uppercut to put Johnny Munoz out in a minute? Less than a minute, maybe? It was a very short time. What'd you make of that?
Just over a minute, 108. I honestly didn't think the uppercut landed that flush, that hard. But Tony Gravely's got some absolute power, man. And I actually picked it for the Gravely pick because this dude brings it. Yeah, he's a wrestler, but he brings it. He is front foot forward all the time. He's not going to give you a breath at all. And Munoz brings it as well. And look what happened, man. Yup, you go to sleep.
Instant violence, man. Instant violence. Now, my sleeper, I told you guys about this. I didn't think it would happen the way that it happened, but Renat Fakhretdinov, man. Another dude comes in and he just ragdolls Andreas Michailidis for 3 rounds. Big brothers him, 30-26s him. I mean, does everything that he needs to do to get the win to ensure the victory. Watch out for that guy. That's all I will say on that. It wasn't the most entertaining, so I apologize about that. All right, Damon Jackson versus Dan Argueta. Another very... If you're a high action, high violence fan, this probably was boring and you fell asleep or skipped it. But Damon Jackson did what he needed to do, put the backpack on the formerly undefeated Dan Argueta, former tough fighter, Dan Argueta. It was on TUF 29. And like I said, man, he just does what he does to win, man. 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. Now, he did get lumped up a little bit, bad black eye in that fight, but he won the fight convincingly. He won it handedly. He was supposed to fight Darrick Minner, which would have been much more competitive fight, I think, much more fun back and forth fight. But at the end of the day, man, I mean, Damon Jackson is looking real dangerous these days. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect anything else from the Leech, honestly. And this I was going to ask your opinion on this, Derick, what you thought about it. But I was a little underimpressed by the Leech. I was a little unimpressed by Damon Jackson because I feel like if you're fighting a guy who fights at 135, he has 3 days notice. He's fighting a weight class up. You should just punk this kid, man. Like, especially he's only 8-0. Like, I feel like that's one of those ones where you come in, you're Damon Jackson. You put it on this cat. So I was a little unimpressed, and I think that's why I was, I guess, not unimpressed, but I was more impressed that Argueta was able to survive as long as he was, talk as much shit as he was, and even they had the coaches going back and forth, man. The coach, there might have been a scrap in the back, bro. Their coaches are getting after it. But the fact that Damon Jackson was so upset at the end of the fight, knowing that he got up and he pushed him. There was a little extra shove. Yeah. That's almost a win in Argueta's book for me. You know what I'm saying? Because sure, you're not going to win that fight. You walked in there. We all knew he wasn't going to win that fight. But to get under the Leech's skin like that, get him that mad, that's a win for me. What do you think?
That's definitely a moral victory right there. Big time loss. But this was also a rivalry between the camps because it was Fortis MMA and Jackson Winks. And believe it or not, Saif Saud, actually, who was the Fortis MMA head coach, he started at Jackson Winks, right? So it's a little bit of history there, but I agree. Damon Jackson, he's too much of a veteran to be bothered by the Dan Arguetas of the world. But either way, I appreciate the effort by Dan Argueta because you got to risk it to get the biscuit. And I will leave it at that. Jeff Molina, he edges out a very, very close split decision against Zhalgas Zhumagulov, who's a very, very good fighter. I think he won. I'll kind of leave it at that. I thought it was a fair fight. I thought it was a fun fight. Zhumagulov tried to do a lot of grappling. Molina's trying to strike, all that good stuff. Benoit Saint-Denis. Watch out for that name, folks. That's all I'm going to say. This dude can grapple with the best of them. He can knock you out. He can hit you with the body kicks. He beat a Niklas Stolze, which is not an easy thing to do. And I will just say, what is he, 100% finish rate or something like that? 9-1, man. This dude is a killer right there. So watch out for another French fighter. You got the Cyril Gans, you got the Nasruddin Imavovs, and you got the Benoit Saint-Denis. Put some respect on my man's name. All right, AJ, lastly, Erin Blanchfield. And I wanted to talk about this in the beginning because she's one of my favorite fighters, but we're going to parlay this into a little bit of a ranking review. She gets the high elbow guillotine on J.J. Aldridge. She did something to J.J. Aldridge, which I thought was very impressive because we says if there's one person to upset Erin Blanchfield, it's J.J. Aldridge. And guess what? If that fight didn't end the way that it ended, I thought Aldridge was winning the little bit of the exchanges that they had, right? So when you look at the losses for J.J. Aldridge, 3 losses, and 3 of her 5 losses have ended by finish. 2 submissions, 1 TKO. The list of people that have been able to finish J.J. Aldridge is a Jamie Moyle, and this came in the Invicta days, right? You have Macy Barber, who TKO'd her, and then you have Erin Blanchfield. That's it, right? Everybody else, the Jillian Robertsons, Vanessa Demopoulos, Courtney Casey, Sabina Mazo, Lauren Mueller, Poliana Viana, Danielle Taylor. I mean, listen, all of these people, they couldn't do any of this stuff to J.J. Aldridge. So Erin Blanchfield is a real killer. 3-0 in the UFC. She is 9-1 in her MMA career. And I feel like this is the next prospect that we need to be watching in the women's flyweight division. Do you agree with me on that one, AJ?
100%, man. We both in the pre-show said if there's somebody who can get it done, it's going to be J.J. Aldridge. Turns out Erin Blanchfield is a real deal. And we've known about it for a while. So Erin Blanchfield is the real deal. Yeah. It's just she's kind of fallen off, at least in the media-wise, a little bit. So it's good to see her get back because she's very much a dark horse in the 125-pound division. I mean, and in a not super stacked division either. So we're going to see some very entertaining fights with Blanchfield coming up soon.
I agree. And with that being said, let's parlay this into a rankings review, brother, where we're talking about the Erin Blanchfields, and I'm going to be honest, our personal rankings aren't quite up to par on where they need to be right now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a dip into the UFC's, just the rankings, just straight up, you know what I mean? And just take a look what we're seeing there. So AJ, brother, because the flyweights are on the right side, and that's where our screen is, I'm going to move us over to the left. How about that? All right. So clearly, you got Shevchenko, the champ, in the forefront. This is what she does. She's going to be here for another 6 to 10 title defenses, in my opinion, but we'll see what happens. Katlyn Chookagian, number 1. Lauren Murphy, Jessica Andrade, Tyler Santos, the challenger next week for the belt against Shevchenko. But we need to take a look down here, because this is where we need to concern ourselves with. The Tracy Cortezes, the Macy Barbers, Casey O'Neills. Now, AJ, I will say right now, in my personal rankings, I actually have Erin Blanchfield around like number 12. That's how good that I think she is. But she's nowhere to be found in these top 15 rankings right here, AJ. Do you think right now, an Erin Blanchfield, who is a great grappler in her own right, has some good striking chops, do you think she could take care of a Tracy Cortez who is newly minted in the women's flyweight top 15?
Absolutely. My mind was, that's why I was giving this face over here that it's Tracy Cortez and not Erin Blanchfield in there, because I have Blanchfield at 14 on my own.
Yeah.
When I saw Tracy Cortez, I was like, what? Like they threw it in there? All right, interesting.
But you got to think, she's popular, right? She's on that Brian Ortega camp, right? She's a looker. So at the end of the day, man, she's fitting all the criteria to be a candidate, a contender you want to start building up and marketing, right? But then you got the Macy Barber, who was the future. She was supposed to be the champion. Obviously, things turned another way. But I think if you put Macy Barber up, which, believe it or not, Macy Barber or Erin Blanchfield called for the winner of Jessica Eye and Macy Barber, I believe. I think that's their upcoming fight. So she wants this fight. Do you think that if Macy Barber is able to get past Casey O'Neill, that Erin Blanchfield can get the dub?
Oh man, that's a hard fight for me. Maybe just because I'm a Macy Barber fan, but I feel like that's a very tough fight for Blanchfield. I'm gonna give it to Barber. I'm gonna give it to Barber on that one. What about you?
Well, I think that Macy Barber probably has a size advantage on Blanchfield, but I feel like I've seen Blanchfield be able to, or Macy Barber get taken down by lesser fighters, and Blanchfield is a very, very aggressive grappler, so I think that she might be able to make something happen there. We can't even consider Casey O'Neill right now, given that she just tore the ACL, right? So she's on the bench right now. Unfortunately, she's taken the approach of the Julia Avilas, you know what I mean, and stuff like that, where it's like, dang, man, I just want to see you healthy. I want to see you fight. What's our other one? Not Julia Avila, but she's women's strawweight. She's a crazy wrestler. I see the face, but I'm blanking on the name. She's some type of Latina. You know who I'm talking about, bro?
No.
Oh, well.
Viviane Araújo?
Nah, brother. She's a little more of a Suarez. Tatiana Suarez. That's who I'm talking about.
Suarez. Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
So it's one that's like, if only you can be healthy, bro, you'd be the champion. But that's neither here nor there. All right, man. Cynthia Calvillo, who has been back and forth, man. I don't know if she's in strawweight right now. I don't know if she's in flyweight. She's been so back and forth. But Erin Blanchfield against Cynthia Calvillo, who's an established veteran, someone who needs to be respected in the division. Is that too high of a leap for an Erin Blanchfield right now?
You're going to call me crazy, Derick. I think that's a great fight. That is a great fight right there to make. At least, I mean, for both fighters. Because it gives the hype of the Erin Blanchfield coming up versus the Cynthia Calvillo, who, like you said, is that established veteran. Mm-hmm. Calvillo is good all around, too. If we see a good wrestling match there between those two, I mean, I actually have Erin Blanchfield above it. I think she can win, but that's still a very, very hard fight for her.
I'm with you, man. And believe it or not, I mean, I know styles make fights, but for me, when I'm looking at these names, man, I think that an Erin Blanchfield, bro, she can go as high as that number 9. I think she can get past the Joanne Woods and the Andrea Lees, personally. But maybe that's just how much I believe in her. You know what I mean? That can always be a potential. That could be how much that I just truly believe in the fighter that is an Erin Blanchfield. But either way, I think it's safe to say that we see her as more or less of a 10 to 15, you know what I mean? Anywhere in between there, but as high as 10. But the UFC doesn't even see her as 15 right now. Hopefully that changes come Tuesday when the rankings update. But either way, that is your 60-second rankings review. Erin Blanchfield is a fighter you need to keep an eye on. If you know anything about the sport, you should know Erin Blanchfield is the one. Now, AJ, fighter of the night, brother. Let's talk about it.
Right now, there is not a man on this planet that can stop me inside this octagon. The celebration is more work than the fight.
Fighter of the night.
So there's a lot of ways that we can go about this, but I actually want to start, if you don't mind, AJ. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I'm literally just going to say just a few words, and this is as simple as I'm going to keep it, folks. My fighter of the night is Movsar Evloev, 16-0, 6-0 in the UFC, ragdolls everybody that comes his way. He's getting a lot crispier with the hands, relentless with the takedowns, and at the end of the day, there's almost nowhere you can play it where you're safe against this guy. You want to strike against him? Well, he got a right cross that's coming hot down the pipe for you, and all he's going to do is use that right cross to set up the takedown. So the moment you start thinking about, all right, now I got to concern myself with the combos, he's at your feet, he's at your ankles, and now you're on your back. There's no sense of flow or rhythm with this guy because at any given time, you can be put down on your back, and when you're on your back, you could be there for the rest of the round. And when you're going against an undefeated Russian grappler like a Movsar Evloev, who was absolutely relentless, the only thing you can do is try to slow him down, try to contain him just a little bit. Is that advised? Absolutely. Is it easy to do? Absolutely not. And at the end of the day, it is proven with his record. He is 16-0. No finishes in the UFC, which is a little cause for concern once you get to the higher echelon. But at the end of the day, if you could squeak out decisions all day long, you might not be the most popular guy in the world, but you are winning. And there's another guy, AJ, that even though he racked up more finishes, there's another guy who was very popular for his ragdoll style. And I think that guy's name was Khabib Nurmagomedov, right? And let's just say I see a little bit of a similarity. So for what it's worth, Movsar Evloev, fighter of the night. I think the results speak for themselves. The action speaks for itself. I don't even need to say words because if you watch this dude, you know what I'm talking about. So I will leave that there, AJ. How do you feel about that, and who is your fighter of the night?
I like it, Derick. I mean, Movsar Evloev. I mean, I like the comparison against Khabib. The nice thing for Evloev, Khabib didn't get famous until his 27th fight in the UFC. Yeah. Nobody knew who he was until he fought Conor McGregor. Yeah. Maybe a little bit before that. Either way, yeah. It came late in the career. So Evloev has some time to make it real big going forward, man. But my fighter of the night coming forward, man, this one, it's a little interesting. It's kind of a different way I'm going about this one, man. I'm going Dan Ige. I'm going Dan Ige as my fighter of the night because even though he lost, I think he won the mental battle. He got under someone's skin. He made him upset. Sure, he wasn't fighting in his own weight class. He took a late fight replacement, and he made a show, man. He made everybody know who this dude was. Had the coaches chirping back and forth. Had Damon Jackson pissed off that he wasn't able to get the finish against him. But what I like most about Dan Ige, he says, yeah, sure, like I lost the fight, whatever, but I got my contract in the UFC. I made a statement. I'm here to play. I lost the fight, but like I said, I feel like he won the war. He might have lost the fight, but he won the war. He won the mental battle, and he was able to get his UFC contract, where before that he was struggling, man. He went on the Ultimate Fighter, lost, I think it was semifinals, a little before that, whatever it was, lost it out of there, had to go back to the jungle fights, had to go back to all the other ones, the regional promotions he was doing, and then he sees a shot. I'm all about that, man. I'm all about taking that shot, making it yours as it comes up. Got to stay ready, so whenever that opportunity presents itself, you're already ready to go, and that's Dan Ige style right here. That's why I was liking it, man. Sure, he didn't win the fight. It's all good though. He showed up. He's on the biggest on the biggest platform of fighting now. He's finally made it. And you piss somebody off where you kind of get under their skin, you get to go home with a smile. And what I like, all I was thinking when I was making this fighter of the night, all that came to mind was David Goggins. Because Dan Ige, as he's sitting there, doing the little pot shots, doing little stuff, getting up, Damon Jackson goes and pisses, shoves you as you leave. Jackson's not fucking tonight, man. He's going to be very upset. His mind's going to be bothered by the whole fact that he wasn't able to get him. Like, why wasn't able to finish this young dude? Like, his mind's going to be turning 100 miles an hour. Ain't no pussy happening there, man. Dan Ige, he's going to be getting it going. And if you're a fan of David Goggins, you know the exact story I'm talking about. And that's all it made me think about, man. It made me laugh. It made me a little happy. What's your thoughts?
No, I absolutely agree with you, man. It's unconventional. I'll definitely say that. But at the end of the day, man, to get that much of a mental edge on an established veteran like a Damon Jackson, who's not his first UFC stint, second UFC stint, man. He's been everywhere you need to go. That speaks volumes. And it goes to show that even losing your undefeated record, which technically you lost on tough. You're not undefeated, really, but you lose your undefeated record. There's no more O on there, and you still aren't being a crybaby about it, all that good stuff, man. It shows resilience, and I think he does have a bright future. So that is your fighter of the night, folks. And let's move into one last topic, I guess you should say, before we head up out of here. And that is the word on the street, AJ. And we need to jump in just a couple stories real quick, man. Paulo Costa, he says that he never assaulted a nurse, and he claims that it was an attempt to harm him. So you see something like that, and you're like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Why is something always going on with this guy, Paulo Costa, man? So listen, he made news earlier this week after being accused of assaulting a nurse over a vaccination card, and he's finally opened about the situation. Now, basically, he's more or less saying that there's all this misinformation with he's trying to get this vaccine and do this shot and all this, and he got the vaccine, but the nurse wouldn't give him the vaccine card. So then like they try to put a hand on him, and he just kind of like watch out, get off me. And then they say, oh, he assaulted me, elbows, and you know the way things go these days. That can definitely be the case. We don't know each side of the story, and I don't really care about this story at the end of the day, man. This means nothing to me. But what this means is that the once glorified Paulo Costa, who at one point, AJ, we said this is the next champion. This is the guy to do it. You got weight issues. You're getting knocked out and dry humped by Israel Adesanya. You know what I mean? The career that you once had is now kind of in a downward spiral that you can't seem to get out of. And a lot of the time it's because, well, it's the wine. I was drunk. It is the lack of self-accountability, which you and I know is a recipe for a career downfall. But at the end of the day, we just watching it live in action, man. What do you make of this?
Crazy, man. Crazy that this dude cannot just get out of his own way. And going back to the wine thing, it blew my mind that that was a little form of cheating. You drink all that wine, you try to dehydrate yourself a little bit more, pee out a little extra. We all know how the wine is. So it's just this dude, any little thing he can do, he's going to try to do it, which I'm not against. I'm down. Like you want to push the rules, push the boundaries a little bit. Cool. Just don't get caught, get out of your own way, brother. By all means, he could have been a star and he could have been fighting for championships, champion, maybe, who knows, but this dude just keeps getting his own way. It's rough to see, especially in this, because as a fighter, you don't have the most, fan-friendly PR to the normal people. They see this big old muscle-up juice head walking in, and then he's waving his arms like crazy. The last thing you need to be is, another story. I'm not even going to bring attention to the guy's name because there's no need for people of violence to be glorified. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Especially out of the ring. In the ring, all day, whatever, cool. We know that. But out of the ring, come on, bro, chill.
Yeah, you get paid to do it, so why are you doing it for free? That always blows my mind. But either way, interesting story about him. And the last thing that I really want to touch on is that this is just what I thought was cool. Aljamain Sterling on Sean O'Malley as a potential title contender in the future. He says, if I'm being honest, that guy's really fucking good, bro. And I think we agree. We know that Sean O'Malley is really, really good. Maybe people have issues with the path he's taking to the top of the division, right? You know what I mean? But now he's fighting the ranked guys. And who's he fighting next? Pedro Munoz, right? Like, he's got a real contender on his hands, a real deal contender. But what does it mean when the champion of the division says that the prospect who inevitably will somehow, some way, one day make it to that point where I do believe he will be challenging for a title? What does it mean when he says, if I'm being honest, that guy's really, really good, bro? You know what I mean? That's got to give you even more confidence than O'Malley already has. And what do you think that will do for his head in the future for his career? What do you think?
Well, I mean, the old saying, real recognize real, man. It does go into saying right here. But I like what you're saying, where you're going with this one about how it's going to do to Sean O'Malley, because I don't think you can inflate his ego any more than it already is. But somebody saying that can add a little bit of pressure, like, oh, like maybe I am good, like, okay. And then you start kind of thinking that adding a little bit more pressure could have been somewhat of a mind game coming from Aljo. Always those backhanded compliments, or somebody's giving you like a compliment. We used to always talk about this in Portland, Derek. Sometimes they're just a little too friendly. Like, what you want? Like, why are you giving me a compliment, bro? Why are you saying I'm good? Like, what's up? Like, there's a little mental game I think going on, which I like from Aljo.
Absolutely, man. I do think that this is also cool that Aljamain Sterling, even though it was a tough path to the title, man, didn't win it really the first time, and then you win, then it's controversial and it's a split decision, and but now he's the champ. He is the champ, and it is what it is, right? And for him to be so transparent and just to be the down-to-earth guy, to be like, yeah, this guy's really good, man. I actually appreciate his talents and all that, man, instead of none of these guys can touch me. They're all terrible, da-da-da-da-da. Showmanship goes to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, being humble, man. People like that too, right? So that is your word on the street, folks. I didn't want to bring up too much, man, but listen, what's important to know right now is that, let me actually pull it up right now because I don't have it up. So the next week, we see a couple different title fights, right? We have Shevchenko. She's getting it in against Tyler Santos, which at the end of the day could be exciting, could not be exciting. It just, I guess, depends on how you look at it. And here it is right here. This is the poster, folks. So let me bring that down. So yeah, Shevchenko versus Santos. You got Yuri Prohashka versus Glover Teixeira, and then you got the return of Joanna Champion, brother. This is the first step into what I do think will be another title run for Joanna Jędrzejczyk if everything goes correctly. So you have a lot of great fights to tune in for. Obviously a pay-per-view, so get your bread ready, get your savings ready for all that, or go hit your local sports bar, which is what we always recommend here. Either way, we have a lot to talk about next week. So until then, folks, enjoy the content that we have put out. drop a like, subscribe, hit us up on YouTube. Bloody Water Podcast or Free Thinkers Club. Type in either one, but what's the most important is you share it with your friends and you subscribe. That's really it. That's all we're talking about here. We made you some money this week, folks. Whether you like it or not, the results are the results, and it's what you have to deal with and what you have to live with. So I hope you're placing your bets. AJ, you got any last words for the people?
Man, nah, Derick, you said it best. Make sure you share it with your friends, support. We're trying to climb up that YouTube algorithm, so make sure you like, subscribe, share, all the jazz you already know. I'm very excited for this next week's fight card. It's going to be a blast. You got to make sure you tune in, folks. Even if you're just hitting up the TLDR, either way, you're going to be making some money, so come tune in, check us out.
Absolutely, and that's right, man. We have the TLDR if that's all you want, or we could break it down. Your choice. You want a minute of content or you want an hour? We got both. It don't matter, folks. All right, we'll catch you on Friday for the preview show for UFC Vegas 275. But until then, take care, folks. Until next time, peace.